Hello. Today is a special day for me because I get to speak with my husband, Todd Stratman, about retirement. It's a conversation we have a lot as a retiree myself and as a retirement life coach. Todd and I have quite a few conversations about this. Before we get into all of that, how would you like to introduce yourself?
Well, Kimberly already introduced who I am, Todd Stratman. I'm her husband. Um, but I'll go a little bit further with that. Grew up in a loving home, a home that was had two great parents that raised us and my brothers very well. They worked hard. They worked, gosh, over 40 years before they themselves retired, and they lived a full life during retirement. Unfortunately, retirement wasn't very long just because of health, but what they had was great, and we have benefited hugely from that. So here we are for us, 30 some odd years later in our own careers, several years of marriage. Kimberly's retired. I'm still working after 33 years, and I'm not ready. Just not ready. But she has two boys who I'm proud to be their stepfather, who are now adults. We've made it through that. Um, Outside of work, we're very spiritual individuals, and as a couple, and that has really helped us out throughout life, making our way through some ups and downs that everybody experiences in our lives. Hopefully, I am looked at as a good man, a good father, a good friend, a great husband, and just someone that people can count on. So hopefully, I live up to that.
Well, you're going to make me cry. Yeah, I think you're definitely all of those and more. To be honest, I don't think that you recognize your value to me, to other people. But anyway, let's get to the retirement conversations. So let's be totally transparent in this. I did not have a problem necessarily deciding to retire through facilitating the Dave Ramsey classes and the Retire Inspired and doing all that. I knew that I was going to have a plan. And then when our drop pension fell apart, I realized I was probably only going to stay with the Dallas Police Department 30 years. Definitely make my 30 years, but probably not go much past that. We had the essential oil business we were doing. There's a lot of other things I wanted to do. I was ready to do it. And then the health issues, I've had the cancers and stuff like that. And I was very comfortable making that decision. And you supported me 100%. Even when you were scared and even when we were nervous about things, you supported me 100%. You've always supported me 100%. And making my decisions and helping me talk through it. The questions you've asked me, your physical support, your vocal support, you've just supported me. It's been great. So then I stopped going to work. I was still on the books for a couple months, but I stopped going to work, and we had the lockdown, and then we had the riots, and then looked like my cancer was back, and my mother-in-law, your sweet mom, was dying. And then there was the wildfires in Colorado in our neighborhood up there. It was a really rough year, and I was begging you, bugging you, nagging you every day to retire, 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 retire. We don't care about the community. We don't care about the city. We don't care about the world. We don't care about anybody. Don't lose it. Nobody values you. Just on and on and on, just every day. And honestly, you you weren't participating in that conversation. It was just me. And then one day I realized that I am an awful wife. I realized that, and now I'm really going to cry, but I realized that I was just a shrew, and that is not how you love your husband. And you're the man I chose to live my life with. And I just realized I had to stop doing that. And I did. I just stopped and I prayed about it. And like, Lord, please forgive me for what I've done. Please don't let it have damaged our relationship, our marriage, the possibility of him retiring at the right time. And I just stood back. And then a beautiful thing happened. You, on your own, started thinking a little bit more about topics that you wouldn't talk about before because of this space I had created. And the irony is, all of this is before I was a retirement coach. That's the irony of it. This was all before we decided for me to take that route. So I backed off, and then you started exploring some different ideas, and we started having some positive conversations about it where there was room to pass ideas back and forth. So I think it's fair to agree that you are still not ready. But could you explain what that looks like for people? Because and when I talk to clients or the first responders, that comes up a lot. They're just not ready. But what does that mean for you? What does that mean for Todd Stratman?
Well, the first problem is I see doing a podcast the first time, there's no script in front of me.
No, just your brilliance.
Oh gosh, it's a big problem, really. But is it? But is it? Um, there are several reasons why I am not ready to retire. For one, I really love the job, and there
Mm.
is a huge identity piece that goes with that. I know it's always a horrible thing to only be identified by what you do professionally, but I think it's a real thing. I think it's a very real thing, especially in certain career fields. Um, there's a lot of passion that goes into all professions, but I think in a first responder profession, there is that's even tenfold. And there's a lot of things that go along with those kinds of careers. An easy one to identify is this table moves.
Don't knock the
An
camera
easy one
over.
to identify is adrenaline, and it's addicting. And I honestly don't want to give that up. I don't want to give up the relationships I have with my coworkers, many which have been decades long, and many which are weeks and months long. And I now get to see grow and do the things that I used to be able to do that I just physically can't do anymore, but to be able to mentor and teach them. So there is some value in that and when I get to stay. Um, Getting pretty long in my answer here, but other reasons why I'm not ready to go is we've made some joint um, some decisions in our life that changed our retirement outlook a little bit, and that needs to be addressed with income. So we're going to do that, and then secondarily is I'm afraid to retire. I'm afraid to give up the income. I'm afraid again what that looks like without the daily the daily grind, so to speak. Um, in addition, there is um, fear of being alone, if you will, because I have not created relationships outside of work. Really, none. And especially with a job where you feel so passionate about the job and about those you work with, I think it's probably crucial to have individuals to fill that gap once you depart from work. And I don't have that. And there's also different things that have happened throughout the last 33 years that have kind of taken away anything to look forward to be honest with you. So that's where I am right now. And that's why I'm still going to keep working. Not to mention there's been a little financial incentive that our city has put forward towards senior officers to keep us around just a little bit longer, and I'm going to take advantage of that. Or we are going to take advantage of that and retire in a little bit better spot than we even are today.
So when I talk to other people, I take notes. I have notes about them going in. I've read about them. I've asked them questions about themselves. So I have some background, but I want it to be organic, and unless there's something they want me to say about them, there's something they definitely want to get across. And over the months, you have helped me a lot come up with some questions to ask people. You've been very influential in the questions that I've asked people. And so I wrote down I just took some notes while you were talking, and the love of the job, reasons why you're not ready, the love of the job, your identity. You mentioned that it's a very real thing, but it's also tempered with that the guilt that we are told of don't identify with what you do.
Mm,
Well,
yeah.
shit, we've done it for 30 years, and we pay a very high price to do that job. There are things in us that do not go away. It doesn't go away.
The whole thing of when you put that uniform on, you change. Have you ever heard that in a news story? If you've heard that in a movie, whatever, there's some truth to that.
There is some truth
You
to it.
change when you put that uniform on. You walk out your door at home a different person than you were when you were still inside.
And there's a lot of people that they say they don't identify with that. And that's fabulous. I think that's great. I had always been, if somebody asked me how I identified myself as a mom, identified myself as a wife, identified myself as a Christian, identified myself as a cop. You know, um, why do I have to feel bad about identifying as a cop? I'm a professional. I was trained. I dedicated myself to it. Our family's schedules over the whole entire career depended upon that. When and if we could go on vacation, we could go on and on and on and look and say how, even if we didn't identify ourselves as a cop, our job identified us as a cop and society identified us as a cop. And the passion, and you said that you have so much passion for doing your job, and I, as a wife, have loved seeing that passion. I remember when you and I first started dating, you had been in SWAT maybe a year and a half or
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
so, and when that call back, when you'd get called in on a warrant, oh my gosh, we would jump up, and it was so exciting. And it was just so exciting. And the training, like that crazy training that you do whenever you jump out of helicopters upside down and rappel, and the excitement that you have for that, I remember all that. And you mentioned that you don't do some of those same things now, but you get to watch the younger guys and gal. Y'all have a hard charging female in your group now, which is fabulous. But that passion, it's changed over the years, but it's still there and it's still important. One thing that I think is kind of funny, because you mentioned not being able to do the things physically. Do you remember back on the PT tests when the older guys, like the real badasses in SWAT, would just pass the test because they didn't want to hurt themselves in the test? You're like, I'll never be like that. I can't believe those guys are doing that, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, that's me. You got to calculate every move so you can pass the next event. That's true. Didn't
Well,
used to be that way.
yeah, all that gear, all those years, all that gear, all those years. But that's the passion and the adrenaline. Oh my gosh, every first responder listening to this understands the adrenaline and how we have to have it, and how we have to now find some healthy ways to have that in our life. And your relationships, you mentioned that. And then, the joint decisions that we've made, that we had to make for me and my well being and my mental health and my physical health. We had to do that. But as a couple, as two first responders, with all of our extra that we have with us, we're having to come together and figure out a way to have those conversations. It's not easy. It isn't easy. Being afraid to retire. Um, when I think back to it, I was probably afraid to retire also, but we know it's unfortunate that my personality is the kind that oftentimes I just totally ignore the fear and just go forward and just jump. Like I don't even know if I have a parachute or a place to land. I'll just jump. Sometimes it works well, sometimes it doesn't. But being afraid to retire and give up the income, that's a huge thing. That's a big thing, to give up the income and the daily grind. It's these schedules. It's good to have a schedule. It's good to have a schedule. And we've seen me go from not really sure where all my time has gone to actually overextending myself in my schedule, and you having to say, babe, slow down, babe, it's 9 o'clock at night, slow down. And I have to appreciate that you recognize that,
Mm-hmm.
but on the same time you can see how it could swing to the other side. And a fear of being alone, and this is something that so many male first responders really struggle with. And then we could take that out even back it up a little bit, and most men struggle with that when they're leaving the built-in relationships of their career, military, public service, and then anybody else also. But
I just want to, so people understand what I mean when I say fear of being alone. She's always going to be with me. That's not the issue. It's the
always.
it's the camaraderie of the guys at
Mhm.
work. It's getting out and being social as much as that can be considered social. So I'll have no problem staying busy. I don't think as a retiree I got plenty of things I like to tinker with and do and new things I want to start and learn when I do pull that trigger. But I currently don't have a built-in thing where I can go drink coffee with the guys, which is something that goes on at work. I don't have a group where I can go in and have that water cooler talk that you find at work. So when I say being alone, I'll be busy.
Mhm.
It's just relationships. So
And,
that's what I mean by being alone.
and we've always recognized that. We've always recognized that. And you have made attempts over the years, and it'll work. But like even when we would do volunteer work, we believed very much in what we were doing. You just didn't want to be with all the people necessarily.
Pretty much.
So we have to find things that you can still be with people, but not have to be with people, right? Like, when you're building the houses, you're down the street cutting the lumber. Nobody can be close to you because you're using the saw, but you're still with people.
Right.
You're still with people. And that's something that, I had to recognize that also, retiring. I needed to be careful of that also because I'm perfectly happy being home with the dogs, just taking care of the house and reading and all that. So, and then the financial incentive, you mentioned that. So from the outside looking in, not as your wife, but if you were a SWAT fellow that I'm interviewing for this podcast, and you mentioned that they gave you a financial incentive to stay for a couple more years, I would ask, ooh, what does that mean to you? What kind of space does that give you? What are your thoughts and ideas on it?
So that's the question. Again, it's not a huge amount of money, but it's more than what we have now. And I do have to work a certain number of hours to benefit from that program during that 2 years. So I will still be able to take vacations and whatnot and enjoy burning down my time as I get close to retirement. What does that mean? It's not like we need it, but it gives me a deadline. I know I'm going to do 2 more years. Doesn't mean I can't do more if I decide to continue to be afraid to retire. But it does set a date. It does set a date. So, and again, the money will deal with that when after that 24 months is up and how we are going to be blessed by that or others be blessed by it, whatever the case may be.
So I look forward to, as you can tell, our dogs are in here. They want to be part of the family right now. I look forward to over the next couple of months us coming back together and intentionally recording your thoughts and ideas and any change that might have happened. And it doesn't have to be linear. And that's one thing that I really want our first responders to understand, that when you are thinking about retiring, when you're planning your retirement, when you're living through your retirement, everything is not linear. It's not 1, 2, 3, ABC. It might be A to F, and then you're back at B, then you're back at A, then you go back to F. And you just have to understand it's a process, and you have to be kind to yourself and even generous with yourself, but be honest. And that's the biggest thing. I know that for me, when I hit a rough spot after retirement and thought, oh, what have I done? What have I done? I needed to think about the confidence that I went into retirement and the process and the plans and the ideas that I had and what mattered to me. I knew what mattered to me. And the bad stuff that happened in life didn't change what mattered to me. So I was confident about it. And I was also honest with myself. And that's what I really, really respect about you. I respect that you are trying to be very honest with yourself. in each aspect of this. And I'll tell you what, I really admire the fact that you didn't, just give in to me when I was begging you to do something that you knew wasn't right for you. And the fact that as a couple we're able to talk now, because that's one thing that, most retirement planning is just about the money. It's just about the money. It's just about the money. And they don't talk about the relationships. They don't talk about the conversations that the two people and even the family has to have about it, and so we're ahead of the ball on that. So, is there the question that you always like me to ask any of the individuals that I interview for the podcast is, with everything said and done, how do you want people to remember Todd Stratman?
Oh, you got me. Very similar to what I said in the
Mm-hmm.
opening. I just want to be remembered as a person with integrity. Um, that's really it. Someone who left a legacy, no matter how large or how small that ends up being for me or for anybody else that leaves a legacy, but leave a legacy for um, the younger officers that I work with or other officers that will come in the future, that there will be a path for them to follow, that I had a part in playing that makes them passionate, better, teamwork, teammates, successful, ultimately safe, and that they also will leave a legacy for those that follow them or for those that are currently shoulder to shoulder with them. And that carries on outside of work as well, as leave a legacy for other people around you. But if I'm speaking specifically of legacy after retirement, that would be it.
Thank you very much. Anybody that knows you knows that this was very hard for you. This was very difficult for you. Um, I thank you very much for it. I would have loved you whether you did it or not, but I absolutely love the fact that you did this. So thank you. And we would love to hear your questions and your comments. We would love to know what you're struggling with going into retirement or already in retirement, what you're struggling. This could be as the first responder, it could be the spouse of those many spouse, first responder couples. We'd love to hear from y'all also. Please subscribe to this website and please like this video. If this is on the podcast, all of our contact information will be included. Anything else you want to say?
Nope, that's a good.
Thanks so much. Stay safe, y'all.